He thought he could buy his freedom with a check for $2 million. Adrian Brown, the ruthless CEO of Brown Vance, believed that erasing his unborn child was just another business transaction, a liability to be removed before a merger. He forced his wife to choose between her marriage and her baby. She chose to leave. He didn't look back, but karma has a way of collecting its debts. 8 years later, on a snowy Manhattan street, Adrian's heart didn't just stop. It shattered. Because the little boy standing across from him didn't just have his eyes, he had the one thing Adrian thought he had destroyed forever. This is the story of the regret that nearly killed him. The air in the corner office on the 50th floor wasn't just cold, it was sterile. It smelled of ozone, expensive leather, and the impending death of a marriage. Adrian Brown stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the ants crawling along Fifth Avenue. He was 32, a prodigy in the private equity world, known for his shark-like ability to smell blood in the water. Today, however, the blood was his own. "It's a simple calculation, Cassandra," Adrian said, his voice devoid of the warmth that had been there when he proposed 3 years ago in the Hamptons. He didn't turn around. He couldn't. "The merger with the Kincaid Group requires me to be unencumbered. A scandal involving a high-risk pregnancy and a distracted CEO drives the stock down. I can't afford a child right now, not with the IPO launching in Q1. Cassandra Hart, Cassie, sat in the leather chair opposite his massive mahogany desk. She was 26, an aspiring interior architect who had put her career on hold to build Adrian's home, his image and his life. Her hands were trembling, resting on her stomach. She was only 9 weeks along. "A calculation," Cassie whispered. Her voice cracked. "Adrian, this is our baby. We talked about this. You said, on our anniversary, you said you were ready." Adrian turned then. His face was a mask of stone, a look he usually reserved for hostile takeovers. "Things change. Isabelle Dubois, the Kincaid liaison, has made it clear. The board sees a family as a liability for me at this stage. I need to be traveling 300 days a year." He walked over to the desk and slid a thick manila envelope across the polished wood. It stopped inches from her hand. "There is an appointment scheduled for tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. at Dr. Oris Thorne's private clinic. It's handled. Discreetly." Cassie stared at the envelope. The realization hit her like a physical blow to the chest. It wasn't just fear in his eyes, it was ambition. He was choosing the Kincaid deal and Isabelle Dubois' influence over the life they had created. "And if I say no?" Cassie asked, her eyes welling up. Adrian sighed, a sound of impatience. "Then we divorce. The prenuptial agreement is ironclad, Cassie. You know that. If you leave on your own, you get nothing. If you do this, if you support me now—" He slid a second piece of paper forward. It was a check. $2 million. A post-recovery gift. "We stay married. We try again in 5 years when the stock stabilizes." The cruelty of it was breathtaking. He was negotiating the life of their child like it was a distressed asset. Cassie stood up. The trembling in her hands stopped, replaced by a cold, vibrating rage. She looked at the man she had loved since college. He was gone, consumed by the city, by the money, and by the whispering of Isabelle Dubois, a woman Cassie had always suspected wanted Adrian for herself. "You don't need to worry about the stock, Adrian," Cassie said softly. She reached out and took the check. Adrian's shoulders relaxed slightly. He thought he had won. He thought everyone had a price. "Good. It's for the best, Cass. You'll see." "I will," she said. She took the check and the appointment card. Then, slowly, deliberately, she tore the check into 4 distinct pieces and let them flutter onto his pristine desk. "I'm keeping the appointment card," she lied. Her voice was steady now. "But not for the reason you think. You want a divorce? You've got it. But you don't get to buy me out." "Cassie, be reasonable." Adrian stepped forward, his jaw tightening. "If you walk out that door pregnant, I will bury you in legal fees. I will prove you are unfit. You won't see a dime. I don't want your dimes, Adrian. I just want out." She turned and walked to the heavy oak doors. "If you keep it," Adrian called out, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl, "don't ever come back. You are dead to me. And that mistake is dead to me too." Cassie paused, her hand on the brass handle. She didn't look back. "Goodbye, Adrian." She walked out into the hallway, past the smirking secretary, and into the elevator. Only when the doors closed did she collapse against the metal wall, sliding down to the floor, sobbing silently, so the security cameras wouldn't catch the sound of her heart breaking. She didn't go to Dr. Thorne's clinic the next morning. Instead, she pawned her wedding ring, a 4-carat diamond Adrian had bought to show off to his partners, for a fraction of its value. She bought a one-way ticket to Seattle, a city where Adrian had no business interests, under her maiden name. She disappeared. And Adrian Brown, convincing himself he had made the hard but necessary choice for his empire, signed the divorce papers via proxy 3 weeks later. He celebrated the Kincaid merger with a bottle of scotch that cost more than Cassie's father made in a year. New York City had not changed, but Adrian Brown had. At 40, Adrian was the face of Brown Global. He was richer than God, featured on the cover of Forbes 3 times, and possessed a jawline that had only gotten sharper with age. He was also visibly, noticeably hollow. He sat in the back of his Maybach, watching the holiday lights of Manhattan blur by. Mr. Brown, his assistant, a young man named Peter who was terrified of him, spoke from the front seat. "Isabel is asking if you will be attending the Winter Charity Gala at the Met tonight. She says it's crucial for the optics of the new European acquisition." Adrian rubbed his temples. Isabel. After Cassie left, Isabel had swooped in. They weren't married. Adrian had refused to sign a marriage license ever again. But she was his partner in every public sense. She was beautiful, sharp, ruthless, and entirely cold. They slept in separate bedrooms. They talked only about margins and social standing. "Tell her I'll be there," Adrian grunted. "But I'm leaving early." "Yes, sir." Adrian looked out the window. Every year around mid-November, a dark depression settled over him. He told himself it was the market cycle. Deep down, his subconscious knew it was the anniversary of the day Cassie walked out. He had tried to find her once, 2 years after the divorce, just to check in. His private investigator found nothing. It was as if Cassandra Hart had evaporated. He assumed she had gone through with the abortion and moved on to some mediocre life in the suburbs. He often told himself he was glad. No baggage, no strings. The car stopped. "Sir, the traffic is gridlocked. There's some street fair happening near Central Park. We might need to wait." "I'll walk," Adrian said abruptly. He needed the freezing air to wake him up. "Sir, it's snowing and security." "I said I'll walk." Adrian stepped out of the car, pulling his cashmere coat tight. The wind whipped at his face. He was near the southeast corner of the park, where the holiday market was in full swing. The smell of roasted nuts and hot cocoa filled the air, scents that used to remind him of Cassie. He began to walk briskly, head down, avoiding eye contact with the tourists. He just wanted to get to his penthouse on 59th Street, change into his tuxedo, and numb himself with a drink before facing the cameras with Isabel. As he passed a booth selling handmade wooden ornaments, something stopped him. It wasn't a sound, it was a laugh. It was a laugh he hadn't heard in 8 years. A melodic, bright, unguarded laugh that used to fill his apartment on Sunday mornings. Adrian froze. His breath hitched in his throat, creating a white cloud in the freezing air. He turned slowly, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. It couldn't be. But it was. Standing about 20 feet away, wrapped in a thick wool coat and a red scarf, was Cassie. She looked different. Older, yes, but more beautiful. Her hair was shorter, cut in a chic bob. She looked tired, but her eyes were crinkling at the corners as she smiled at someone. She wasn't looking at Adrian. She was looking down. Kneeling in front of the booth, tugging on Cassie's hand, was a boy. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The noise of the traffic, the Christmas carols, the chatter of the crowd. It all went silent. All Adrian could hear was the rushing of blood in his ears. The boy was small for his age, wrapped in a puffy blue jacket. He had messy dark hair. Adrian's hair. "Mum, look, the soldier!" the boy shouted, pointing at a wooden nutcracker. Mum. Adrian felt like he had been punched in the gut. She had remarried? She had a child? Then the boy turned his head to look up at Cassie, pleading for the toy. The streetlights hit the boy's face. Adrian staggered back, bumping into a stranger who cursed at him. He didn't notice. He couldn't breathe. The boy had Adrian's nose. He had the same stubborn set of the jaw that Adrian saw in the mirror every morning, but it was the eyes that froze Adrian's soul. One eye was a deep chocolate brown, Cassie's eyes. The other eye was a piercing, icy blue, sectoral heterochromia. It was a rare genetic trait, a trait that ran in the Brown family. Adrian's grandfather had it. Adrian had a subtle variation of it. The math crashed into Adrian's mind with the force of a freight train. 8 years. The boy looked exactly 7 or 8. She hadn't gone to the clinic. She hadn't taken the money. She had kept him. Adrian took a step forward, his expensive Italian leather shoes crunching on the snow. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He felt a surge of emotions he couldn't name. Shock, rage, confusion, and something terrifyingly painful. Hope. "Cassie," he choked out. It was barely a whisper, but she heard it, or maybe she felt the weight of his gaze. Cassie's head snapped up. Her smile vanished instantly, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated terror. She locked eyes with Adrian across the crowd. For a second, they were just 2 ghosts staring at each other across a graveyard of memories. Then, Cassie's instincts kicked in. She didn't say hello. She didn't scream. She grabbed the little boy's hand so hard he yelped. "Leo, come on!" she hissed, panic rising in her voice. But the soldier, "Now, Leo!" She scooped the boy up into her arms, despite his size, and bolted. She ran toward the subway entrance, disappearing into the swarm of holiday shoppers. "Cassie, wait!" Adrian shouted, finding his voice. He lunged forward, pushing people aside. "Cassandra!" He ran to the spot where she had been standing. The scent of her vanilla perfume still lingered in the cold air. But she was gone. Adrian stood alone in the middle of the crowd, chest heaving, snowflakes melting on his eyelashes. He looked down at the ground. Dropped in the snow was a small plastic ID card. It must have fallen from her pocket when she grabbed the boy. Adrian picked it up with trembling fingers. It was a library card. Leo Hart, Grade 2, PS 118, Brooklyn. Adrian stared at the name. Hart, not Brown. Hart. A primal roar built up in his throat, but he swallowed it down, turning it into cold, hard determination. He pulled out his phone. His hand was shaking so badly he almost dropped it. He dialed his head of security. "Find her," Adrian said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "I don't care what it costs. Find Cassandra Hart, and find my son." The headline on page 6 the next morning read, "Brown Solo. CEO Adrian Brown skips Met Gala. Rumors swirl of trouble in paradise with Isabelle Dubois." Adrian didn't even glance at the paper Peter placed on his desk. He hadn't slept. He was still wearing the clothes from the night before, his eyes red-rimmed, staring at the plastic library card sitting in the center of his glass desk, like a holy relic. "Cancel my meetings," Adrian said, his voice gravel. "But sir," Peter stammered, adjusting his glasses, "the board is expecting the Q4 projections, and Ms. Dubois is on line 1. She's very upset. Tell Isabel I'm handling a crisis, and tell the board if they want their dividends, they'll wait." Adrian didn't look up. "Where is the report, Peter?" Peter swallowed hard and placed a thick black binder on the desk. "The private investigator worked all night, sir. It's all there." Adrian snatched the binder. He felt a wave of nausea. He was used to reading dossiers on hostile takeovers, looking for weaknesses in rival companies. He wasn't ready to read the dossier on the life he had thrown away. He opened it. Subject: Cassandra Hart. Current residence: 4B, 221 Elm Street, Flatbush, Brooklyn. Occupation: waitress at Sal's Diner. Days: freelance graphic designer. Nights. Marital status: single. Dependents: Leo Hart, age 7. Adrian's finger traced the photo attached to the file. It was a candid shot taken this morning. Cassie was walking Leo to school. She looked exhausted, wearing the same coat from last night, carrying a worn-out backpack. Leo was laughing, kicking a pile of snow. Adrian flipped the page to the financial section. His heart sank. Credit score: 5 of 80. Bank balance: $412. Debts: $12,000. Medical bills: Leo Hart, pneumonia hospitalization, 2021. She was drowning. She refused the money, Adrian whispered to himself. He remembered the torn check. $2 million. She could have lived in luxury. She could have started her own firm. Instead, she was waiting tables in Flatbush to feed his son. "Peter," Adrian said, standing up abruptly. "Get the car." "Where are we going, sir?" "Brooklyn." Meanwhile, across the city, Isabelle Dubois was pacing in the penthouse living room. She was 42, impeccably preserved by Botox and bitterness. She threw her phone onto the velvet sofa. "He's not picking up," she spat. Sitting across from her was a man in a dark suit, Marcus Vane, the company's ruthless legal counsel and Isabel's longtime ally. "Adrian has been erratic lately," Marcus said, sipping an espresso. "But missing the gala. That's not like him. The Kincaid investors were asking questions." He was walking. Isabel narrowed her eyes. He got out of the car near the park. When he came home at 3:10 a.m., he looked like he'd seen a ghost. He went straight to his study and locked the door. Isabel walked to the window. She had worked too hard to secure her place next to the brown throne. She wasn't about to let a midlife crisis derail the merger she had orchestrated. "I have a contact in his security detail," Isabel said slowly. "I'll find out where he went. If he's seeing a woman, Marcus, I want her destroyed. I want her reputation in tatters before the market opens on Monday." Marcus smirked. "Consider it done. But if it's not a woman? If it's something else?" "With Adrian," she replied coldly. "It's never about love. It's always about leverage. Find out who has leverage on him." The Maybach looked like a spaceship landed in the middle of Elm Street. The neighborhood was gritty, a mix of old brick walk-ups and fading storefronts. Adrian watched from the tinted window. He saw the building, a 4-story structure with peeling paint and a rusted fire escape. This was where his son slept. This was where the heir to the Brown fortune lived. Rage boiled in his gut. Not at Cassie, but at himself. And strangely, at her, too. Why didn't she tell me? Why struggle like this? "Sir, do you want me to accompany you?" his driver asked. "No, stay here." Adrian stepped out. The wind was biting. He walked up the cracked concrete steps and pushed the buzzer for 4B. No answer. He remembered the file. Waitress at Sal's Diner. He walked 2 blocks down. He saw the sign. Sal's Diner. Best coffee in Brooklyn. He pushed the door open. A bell jingled. The place was warm, smelling of bacon grease and old coffee. It was busy with the lunch rush, and there she was. Cassie was wearing a stained pink apron, balancing a tray of burgers. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, but when she spoke to an elderly customer, she smiled that same warm smile that used to greet Adrian after a long day. "More coffee, Mr. Henderson?" she asked the old man. "Please, darling." Adrian stood by the door, frozen. He was wearing a $5,000 bespoke suit in a diner where the special was $6.99. Heads started to turn. The silence rippled through the room until it reached the counter. Cassie turned to grab a pot of coffee. She saw him. The pot slipped from her hand. Smash! Hot coffee splashed across the floor and onto her sneakers. Glass shattered. "Cassie, you okay?" A burly man behind the grill shouted. Cassie didn't answer. She was staring at Adrian, her face draining of all color. She looked like a deer caught in the headlights of a semi-truck. Adrian walked forward, ignoring the coffee on the floor. He stopped 2 feet from her. "We need to talk," he said. His voice was low, commanding, the voice he used in boardrooms. Cassie was trembling. She grabbed a rag and bent down to clean up the mess, using the action to hide her face. I'm working, Adrian. You can't be here." "I went to the apartment," Adrian said. "I saw where you live." Cassie stood up, clutching the dirty rag. Her fear was turning into defensiveness. "It's a home. It's warm. It's ours." "He's my son, Cassie," Adrian said. He didn't mean to say it so loud, but the words tore out of him. The diner went dead silent. Mr. Henderson's spoon clattered into his bowl. Cassie's eyes widened. She stepped out from behind the counter, grabbing Adrian's arm and dragging him toward the back exit. "Not here! Not here!" She pushed him out into the alleyway behind the diner, where the smell of garbage and winter air mixed. She slammed the metal door shut and spun around. "How dare you!" she hissed, her eyes blazing. "How dare you walk in there and say that?" "Is it true?" Adrian demanded, though he already knew. "The eyes, the age, he's mine. He's mine." Cassie poked him in the chest, hard. "I carried him. I birthed him alone in a charity ward because I had no insurance. I raised him. I sat up with him when he had pneumonia, and I couldn't afford the private room. You wrote a check to kill him." Adrian flinched. The truth struck him like a whip. "I didn't know," he said, his voice breaking. "I thought you thought I got rid of the liability." Cassie laughed, a bitter, sharp sound. "I almost did, Adrian. I sat in that clinic. I heard the names being called. But then I thought about you. I thought about how much I loved you, and how much I wanted a part of you to survive the monster you were becoming. So I ran." "Cassie, look at me," Adrian pleaded. He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "I'm different now. I have resources. I can help. He shouldn't be living in a walk-up. He shouldn't have debts. I can give him the world." "You don't get to buy him, Adrian," Cassie shouted, tears streaming down her freezing cheeks. "He's happy. He doesn't know he's missing anything. He thinks his father died a hero before he was born. That's the story I gave him. Don't you dare ruin that." "You told him I'm dead?" Adrian felt a cold spike in his chest. I told him his father was a good man who loved us but had to go away. I lied to protect him from the truth, that his father chose a merger over his life. Cassie wiped her eyes aggressively. Go back to your glass tower, Adrian. Go back to Isabel. Leave us alone. If you come near Leo again, I'll scream. I'll call the police. She turned to go back inside. I can't do that, Adrian said softly. Cassie stopped, hand on the door handle. I can't unknow that I have a son, Adrian said. I'm not leaving, Cassie. I'm going to be a father, whether you like it or not. Cassie turned back, her face pale. Is that a threat? It's a promise. The war began on a Tuesday. Cassie had spent the last 48 hours in a state of high anxiety. She kept Leo home from school on Monday, claiming he had a cough, just to keep him close. She checked the locks on their apartment door 3 times an hour. She thought maybe Adrian was bluffing. Maybe the shock would wear off, and he would return to his shiny, shallow world. She was wrong. At 4:15 p.m., a knock came at the door. Cassie froze. Leo was on the living room rug, building a complex tower out of old playing cards. He was brilliant at structures, just like his father. Mum, someone's at the door, Leo said, looking up with those mismatched eyes. Stay there, Leo, Cassie said. She walked to the door and looked through the peephole. It wasn't Adrian. It was a man in a messenger uniform. Cassie opened the door a crack. Yes? Cassandra Hart? Yes. Delivery. He handed her a thick envelope and walked away. Cassie's hands shook as she opened it. Inside wasn't a letter. It was a legal summons. Superior Court of New York Plaintiff. Adrian Brown, Defendant. Cassandra Hart, Re. Paternity suit and petition for emergency custody. The room spun. He wasn't just asking to see Leo. He was suing her. He was claiming that she had absconded with the child and concealed his paternity, denying the child his rightful heritage and medical security. Mom? Leo's small voice cut through the ringing in her ears. Is something wrong? Cassie shoved the papers behind her back. She forced a smile. No, baby, just a bill. Suddenly, there was another knock. Heavier this time. Cassie opened the door, ready to scream at the messenger. But it was Adrian. He was standing there, not in a suit, but in a thick wool sweater and jeans. He held a large gift box in his hands. I know you got the papers, Adrian said quietly. You monster, Cassie whispered, stepping out into the hallway and pulling the door almost shut behind her. You're suing me? You're trying to take him? I'm trying to establish rights, Adrian said, his face hard but his eyes pleading. I consulted my lawyers. If I didn't file, you could disappear again. I couldn't take that risk. I have a job here, a life. A life where you can't afford his asthma medication? Adrian shot back. I saw the debts, Cassie. I paid them. Cassie gasped. You what? I paid off the medical bills and the credit cards. You're debt-free as of this morning. I didn't ask you to do that. That's controlling. That's a father taking care of his family, Adrian interrupted. He gestured to the box. Can I just see him? Please, I brought him the nutcracker, the soldier he wanted. Cassie stared at the box. She felt trapped. On one side, the legal system which Adrian could manipulate with a snap of his fingers. On the other, the undeniable reality that Leo did need things she couldn't give him. And deep down, a treacherous part of her heart still remembered the Adrian who used to read poetry to her belly. 5 minutes, Cassie whispered. If you upset him, if you say anything about who you really are, I will kill you, Adrian, I swear to God. I promise, just a friend of Mum's. Cassie opened the door. Adrian stepped into the small apartment. It was tiny, smaller than his walk-in closet, but it was colourful. There were drawings on the walls, warm rugs, and the smell of cinnamon. "Leo," Cassie called out, her voice trembling slightly. "We have a visitor." Leo looked up from his card tower. He saw the tall man standing in the doorway. Adrian felt his knees go weak. Being this close to the boy was like standing next to a nuclear reactor. The connection was immediate and terrifying. "Hi," Leo said shyly. "Hi, Leo," Adrian said. He dropped to one knee so he was eye level with the boy. "My name is Adrian. I work with your mum." "You have a nice coat," Leo said. Adrian chuckled, a wet sound. "Thanks. I heard you liked soldiers. I found this one." He held out the box. Leo's eyes went wide. He tore the paper. When he saw the wooden nutcracker, the expensive hand-carved one from the market, his face lit up with pure joy. "Mom, look! It's the general!" Leo shouted. "It's beautiful, Leo," Cassie said, leaning against the doorframe, her arms crossed, watching Adrian like a hawk. "Do you like to build things?" Adrian asked, pointing to the cards. "Yeah. But I ran out of cards for the bridge," Leo said seriously. "You know," Adrian said, his voice soft, "if you angle the base cards at 45 degrees, you can support more weight. It's called a truss." Leo frowned, then tried it. The structure held. He looked at Adrian with awe. "Whoa, are you an engineer?" "Something like that," Adrian smiled. For the first time in 8 years, the smile reached his eyes. For 20 minutes, the billionaire wolf of Wall Street sat on a frayed rug in Flatbush, teaching a 7-year-old how to build a suspension bridge out of bicycle playing cards. Cassie watched them. The resemblance was haunting. The way they both furrowed their brows, the way they both used their hands when they explained things. It broke her heart, and it terrified her. "Adrian," she said, her voice sharp. "Time's up." Adrian froze. He looked at his watch. He didn't want to go. He wanted to stay here, in this drafty apartment, forever. "Right," Adrian said. He stood up. His knees cracked. "Bye, Adrian," Leo said, already back to his cards. "Thanks for the general." "You're welcome, Leo." Adrian walked to the door. Cassie followed him out into the hallway. "I'm not dropping the lawsuit," Adrian said quietly, the softness vanishing, replaced by his business armor. Cassie's face hardened. "I know. But I don't want to take him away from you, Cass. I want joint custody. I want him to know me. I want to pay for his school. I want him to have the life he deserves." "He has the life he deserves," Cassie said. "He has love. You have money. They aren't the same thing." "I can have both," Adrian said. "I'm going to prove it to you." "Get out, Adrian." Adrian walked down the stairs. He felt alive. He felt a purpose he hadn't felt in years. He was going to win his family back, but he had forgotten one variable. As he stepped out onto the street and got into his car, a black sedan parked across the street started its engine. Inside the sedan, a private investigator with a telephoto lens lowered his camera. He dialed a number. "Ms. Dubois," the man said. "Tell me," Isabel's icy voice answered. "You were right. It's a kid, a boy. Looks just like him. And the mother, it's the ex-wife, Cassandra Hart." There was a long silence on the other end. "I see," Isabel said. Her voice was calm, which made it terrifying. "Send me the address, and get me Dr. Thorne on the line. It seems we have a loose end that needs to be tied up." "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to find out everything about that boy," Isabel said. "If Adrian thinks he can replace me with a ghost from his past, he's mistaken. I won't let a bastard child ruin the merger." The attack didn't come with a weapon. It came with a headline. Cassie woke up at 6 a.m. to the sound of her phone buzzing incessantly. It was vibrating off the nightstand. Confused, she picked it up. She had 42 missed calls. 30 were from unknown numbers. 12 were from Adrian. She unlocked her screen, and her blood ran cold. A news alert from the New York Chronicle was flashing. Billionaire's secret bastard. The hidden life of Adrian Brown's ex-wife and the gold digger plot to extort the CEO. Cassie's hands shook so hard, she dropped the phone. She scrambled to pick it up and opened the article. It was vicious. It painted her not as a struggling mother, but as a calculated con artist who had fled with the child to hold him as leverage for a future payout. It claimed she was unfit, living in squalor, and had denied Adrian access to his son for years. It was Isabel's handiwork. It had to be. "Mum?" Leo's sleepy voice came from the bunk bed. "Why is it so loud outside?" Cassie listened. She heard it then. The murmur of a crowd, the click of shutters. She crawled to the window and peeked through the blinds. Down on Elm Street, a dozen vans were parked. Satellite dishes spun. A swarm of photographers stood by the front door of their building, lenses pointed up at their window like snipers. "Oh God," Cassie whispered. She grabbed Leo, pulling him out of bed. "Leo, honey, we're not going to school today." "Why? Is it a snow day?" "Something like that. We have to play a game called Quiet Mouse. We have to be very quiet." Just then, the buzzer to the apartment rang, and rang, and rang. Someone began pounding on the door. "Ms. Hart, New York Post, just one comment on the $2 million you demanded." "I didn't!" Cassie screamed at the door, tears streaming down her face. "Go away!" Leo started to cry. He covered his ears. "Mum, I'm scared." Cassie dragged him into the bathroom, the only room without windows, and locked the door. She sat on the bath mat, holding him, rocking back and forth. Then her phone rang again. Adrian. She answered it, screaming, "You did this! You and your witch of a girlfriend!" "I didn't." Adrian's voice was frantic. He sounded like he was running. "Cassie, I swear to God, I didn't know she would do this. I'm coming to get you." "Don't come here. You'll bring more of them." "They're already there, Cass." "Look, I've sent my private security team. They are 5 minutes out. They're going to clear a path. You need to pack a bag. Just essentials. You can't stay there." "I'm not going with you." "Cassie, listen to me," Adrian roared, his voice cracking with desperation. "This isn't about us anymore. Isabel has released your address to the public. There are crazy people out there, shareholders, stalkers. You are not safe in that apartment. Please, let me get Leo out." Cassie looked down at Leo. He was trembling, clutching the nutcracker Adrian had given him. His breathing was getting hitchy. The asthma. "Okay," she sobbed. "Okay. But if you hurt him, I'm 5 minutes away." 10 minutes later, the scene on the street was chaos. When Adrian's convoy, 2 black SUVs, screeched to a halt, the paparazzi swarmed like locusts. Adrian jumped out of the lead car. He wasn't the polished CEO today. He was a battering ram. He shoved a cameraman aside so hard the man fell into a snowbank. "Get back!" Adrian shouted, his eyes wild. "Get back, or I'll break every camera here." His security team, 4 massive men in dark coats, formed a wedge, pushing through the crowd to the building entrance. They got the door open. Cassie was waiting in the lobby, Leo wrapped in a blanket in her arms. She looked small, terrified, and furious. "Stay close to me," Adrian said, reaching for them. He tried to put his arm around Leo to shield him. "Don't touch him," Cassie hissed, but she stayed in the pocket of protection he created. They burst out onto the street. The noise was deafening. "Ms. Hart, is it true you stole the baby?" "Adrian, will this affect the Kincaid merger?" "Look over here, let's see the kid." Flashbulbs popped like gunfire. Leo screamed. "Move! Move!" Adrian bellowed, shielding Leo's face with his own coat. They were 5 feet from the car when it happened. A cameraman, desperate for the money shot of the boy's face, lunged forward, tripping over a curb. He crashed into Cassie. Cassie stumbled. Her boots slipped on the icy sidewalk. She fell hard, losing her grip on Leo. Leo tumbled onto the pavement. "Mom!" he shrieked. Before Adrian could reach him, the crowd surged. Someone stepped on Leo's hand. The boy curled into a ball, hyperventilating. His chest heaved. No air was going in. Asthma attack. A bad one. "Leo!" Adrian roared. He punched a photographer in the jaw, a solid, cracking blow that sent the man sprawling. The crowd gasped and fell back. Adrian scooped his son up from the ice. Leo's face was turning blue. His eyes, the brown and the blue, were wide with terror. "He can't breathe!" Cassie screamed, scrambling up, her knee bleeding. "His inhaler! I dropped it!" Adrian didn't wait for the inhaler. He didn't wait for the security. He dove into the back of the SUV with the boy in his arms. "Hospital!" Adrian screamed at the driver. "Now! Drive!" Cassie dove in after them. The door slammed shut. The car peeled away, tires spinning on the slush, leaving the vultures behind. In the back seat, Adrian held his son. "Breathe, Leo. Look at me. Look at Dad. Just breathe." It was the first time he had called himself that, out loud. The waiting room was silent, a stark contrast to the chaos of the street. Adrian sat in a plastic chair, his elbows on his knees, his face buried in his hands. His knuckles were bruised and bloody from where he had punched the photographer. His $5,000 coat was stained with slush and street grime. Cassie stood by the window, staring out at the grey city. She hadn't spoken to him in 2 hours. The doctor came out. Both of them shot up. "He's stable," the doctor said. The tension in the room snapped like a rubber band. "We've got his breathing under control. He has a hairline fracture in 2 fingers on his left hand from being stepped on, but he'll be fine. We want to keep him overnight for observation." Cassie let out a sob of relief and slumped against the wall. "Can we see him?" Adrian asked, his voice hoarse. "In a moment, he's sleeping." The doctor left. Adrian turned to Cassie. "Cass, don't," she said. She turned around. Her eyes were dry now, cold and hard as diamonds. "You said you could protect him. You said you had resources. Look at him, Adrian. He's in a hospital bed because of your world, because of your people." "Isabel did this," Adrian said, a dark fury rising in his chest. "And she's going to pay." "I don't care about Isabel," Cassie shouted. "I care that my son knows his father for 3 days and ends up with broken fingers. You are toxic, Adrian. Everything you touch breaks. You broke me. Now you're breaking him." "I won't let that happen again." "You won't get the chance," she said. "When he walks out of here, we are leaving. I'm taking him to my sisters in Oregon. If you try to stop me, I will tell every judge in this city what happened today." Adrian looked at her. He wanted to argue. He wanted to fight. But he saw the truth in her eyes. He had failed. "I need to make a phone call," Adrian said quietly. He walked out of the waiting room, down the corridor, and out into the cold ambulance bay. He pulled out his phone. He dialed Isabel. She answered on the first ring. "Adrian? Darling, I saw the news. It's dreadful. Is the boy—" "Shut up," Adrian said. His voice was dead calm. "Excuse me?" "I know it was you. You leaked the address. You tipped the paps. I was trying to help you win the narrative." Isabel's voice turned shrill. "That woman is a liability. If we discredit her, my son is in the hospital." There was a pause. "Well," Isabel sniffed, "children are resilient. But Adrian, we have a bigger problem. The Kincaid board is meeting in an hour. They are furious about the brawl on the street. You punched a journalist. They are talking about a vote of no confidence. You need to get here. You need to spin this. Blame the mother. Say she was mentally unstable and caused the scene. If you do that, we can save the merger. Adrian looked up at the grey sky. Snow was falling again. He thought about the Kincaid merger. It was the deal of a lifetime. It would make him the most powerful man in private equity. It was everything he had worked for since the day he forced Cassie to leave. He thought about Leo's small hand, the one with the broken fingers, holding the nutcracker. "I'll be there," Adrian said. The boardroom was an expanse of polished glass and tension. 12 men and women in suits sat around the table. Isabel sat at the right hand of the empty chairman's seat. She looked triumphant. She had the press release drafted. She had the votes whipped. Adrian would throw Cassie under the bus, the stock would rebound, and she would be the queen of Brown Global. The doors opened. Adrian walked in. He hadn't changed clothes. He was still wearing the dirty sweater, the mud-stained jeans, and the bloody knuckles. He looked like a street fighter who had wandered into a palace. The board members gasped. "Adrian!" The chairman of the board, an old man named Cyrus, stood up. "You look unwell. We have the statement ready for you to sign, denying the child, or at least clarifying the situation." Adrian walked to the head of the table. He didn't sit. He looked at Isabel. She smiled at him, a predator's smile. "The statement," Adrian said, picking up the paper. He read it aloud. "I, Adrian Brown, regret the incident. Deeply troubled by Ms. Hart's erratic behavior. The child is a private matter." Adrian laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. He crumpled the paper into a ball and threw it at Isabel. It bounced off her chest. "Adrian!" Isabel stood up. "What are you doing?" "I'm done," Adrian said. He looked around the table. "You want a statement? Here it is. The boy is my son. His name is Leo, and he is the only decent thing I have ever created." "Adrian, think about the merger," Cyrus warned. "If you admit to this mess, Kincaid walks, the stock tanks." "Let it tank," Adrian said. "I built this company on the idea that value is the only thing that matters. But I was wrong. I've been bankrupt for 8 years. I just didn't know it." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his security badge. He slammed it onto the table. "I resign." The room erupted. "You can't do that. This is suicide." Isabel looked like she had been slapped. "You're throwing it all away? For her? For a brat you didn't even want?" Adrian leaned in close to Isabel, his voice low and dangerous. "I didn't want him because I listened to people like you. I listened to people who think life is a transaction." "You wanted the crown, Isabel. Take it. It's made of glass. It'll cut you eventually." He turned and walked toward the door. "If you walk out that door," Isabel screamed, her composure shattering, "I will ruin you. I will sue you for breach of fiduciary duty. I will take every penny." Adrian stopped. He looked back. For the first time in years, the hollow look was gone. He looked free. "Keep the money," Adrian said. "I have a bridge to build." He walked out. He took the elevator down to the lobby. He walked out of the building he had built, into the snow. He didn't call his driver. He hailed a yellow cab. "Where to, Mac?" the driver asked. "Mount Sinai Hospital," Adrian said. "And hurry." When Adrian walked back into the hospital room, the sun had set. The only light came from the monitors, beeping rhythmically beside Leo's bed. Cassie was asleep in the armchair, her head resting awkwardly on her shoulder. She looked exhausted, her face streaked with dried tears. Adrian moved silently. He took off his dirty wet coat and draped it gently over her. Then he pulled a plastic chair up to the other side of the bed. He looked at his son. Leo's hand was bandaged in a thick splint. His face was pale, but his breathing was steady. Adrian reached out and very lightly touched Leo's uninjured shoulder. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." He didn't check his phone. He didn't check the stock market, which was currently in free fall, as the news of his resignation broke. He just watched his son breathe. Hours passed. Around 2 a.m., Cassie stirred. She blinked, confused by the heavy wool coat over her. She sat up and saw him. Adrian was awake, staring at the ceiling. "You came back," she said, her voice thick with sleep. "I told you I would." "The board meeting?" "I resigned." Cassie froze. The room went silent. "You... what?" "I quit, Cass. I gave it all up. Isabel, the merger, the title, everything." "Why?" she whispered. Adrian looked at her across the bed. "Because today, when he fell, I realized I had spent 8 years building a skyscraper on a foundation of sand. It was never going to hold. You were right. I was poor. I had nothing of value." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a deck of cards, a fresh pack he had bought at the hospital gift shop. "I have no job," Adrian said, a small, tired smile playing on his lips. "I have no company car. My assets are probably going to be frozen for months while the lawyers fight Isabel. But I have time. I have all the time in the world to learn how to build that bridge with him." Cassie looked at him. She looked for the lie, the angle, the trick. But she only saw a man who had stripped himself bare. She saw the Adrian she had fallen in love with in college, before the ambition ate him alive. She didn't run into his arms. There was too much pain for that. But she didn't kick him out. "He likes his toast cut into triangles," Cassie said softly. Adrian blinked, confused. "What?" "Leo. When he wakes up, he'll be hungry. He likes his toast in triangles, and he hates grape jelly, only strawberry." It was a small opening, a tiny crack in the wall she had built. But for Adrian, it was enough. "Triangles." Adrian nodded, memorizing it like it was the most important data point of his career. "Strawberry." "Got it." 6 months later, the house wasn't a penthouse. It was a fixer-upper brownstone in Brooklyn, not far from Cassie's old apartment, but with a backyard. The garden was a mess of lumber and tools. "Okay, Dad, hold it steady," Leo shouted. Adrian was holding a wooden beam, sweat dripping down his forehead. He was wearing a t-shirt covered in sawdust. He looked younger than he had in a decade. "I've got it, Chief. Hammer away," Adrian grunted. Leo, his hand fully healed, hammered a nail into the wood. They were building a treehouse. A real one. On the back porch, Cassie stood watching them, holding a pitcher of lemonade. She wasn't wearing an apron. She was wearing a blazer. With the settlement from the defamation suit against Isabel, who had been fired by the board 3 months later for gross misconduct, Cassie had finally started her own design firm. She walked down the steps. "Break time," she called out. Leo dropped the hammer and ran for the lemonade. Adrian followed more slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. He walked up to Cassie. They weren't remarried. They were taking it slow. They were dating, learning each other again, brick by brick. "Good progress?" Cassie asked. "Structural integrity is at 90%, Adrian grinned. "The client is demanding." "He gets that from you," she laughed. Adrian looked at the boy drinking lemonade in the sun. He looked at the woman standing in front of him. He thought about his old office on the 50th floor, the silence, the cold view of the city. He took Cassie's hand. "You know," Adrian said, "I lost $2 billion to be here today." Cassie squeezed his hand. "And?" Adrian looked at Leo, who was waving at them with a strawberry-stained smile. "Best deal I ever made." And that is the story of Adrian Brown. It's a reminder that sometimes the things we think are liabilities are actually our greatest assets, and the success we chase is nothing but a golden cage. Adrian had to lose everything, his title, his money, and his ego, to find the one thing that actually mattered: being a dad. What do you think? If you were Cassie, would you have given Adrian a second chance after 8 years? Or is some betrayal too big to forgive? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story. We have a crazy one coming up next week about a homeless man who turned out to be a lost lottery winner. You don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching.